Jesus mean when he said to Peter, "Get behind me"?
I think he felt tempted to evade his responsibilities.
Okay. Why did Jesus call Peter Satan?
I think Peter was already thinking about the 30
About the which?
about the 30 pieces of silver.
But what was Peter rebuking him about? They said, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. I wonder what that was about. I wonder what Jesus said.
It kind of makes, if, I wonder if the rebuking was like you mentioned that, he said you got your mind on human things. If they'd seen him raise people from the dead, do these miracles, Peter's saying, what are you talking about? This isn't the way you've acted. He wouldn't want to think about him, what would happen if Jesus wasn't there. So it's a pretty human response. And again, the temptation you're talking about, I can see the Satan part if you're calling the temptation to not go through this, to save himself, to actually, I guess, not follow God's will.
I wonder if it's not, he wasn't saying that because the disciples kept referring to him as the Son of God. But Jesus keeps saying he's the Son of Man. So they're tempting him to take on the mantle as the Son of God at this time.
Yeah, and I think, as she said, Satan's involved in all this. Jesus has started in a certain direction, and Satan's using Peter to try to deflect him to the path he has in front of him.
Okay.
The student book says Jesus called Peter Satan. Evidently, Jesus knew the real potential for evil in his followers who speak the right words without performing the right actions.
Back to your comment, Bonnie. 30 pieces of silver. You think that was consideration here?
I think he was already thinking about how he could profit.
Peter wasn't the one that profited, though, was he?
Judas.
Judas.
denied
Oh,
him.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Peter
I didn't want to
denied-
make your thought. I didn't want to
Peter
make your
denied
thought
him.
hanging.
Peter denied him.
Yes.
Yes.
I think he was trying to instruct Peter as well, because when Peter answered his question, "Who do you say that I am?" and Peter said, "You are the Messiah." In some of the other scriptures, Jesus said, "You did not hear that from me, so God has spoken to you directly, and you are the rock on which I will build my church." The Catholic Church then based the authority of the popes on that statement of Peter's, and Peter was the first pope for the Catholic Church. So he had the pope, having had direct communication from God, as confirmed by Jesus, established that position and established Peter.
Okay. Yes.
I kind of understand it as the conflict between, a number of this part in Mark, as the conflict between Jesus as the servant of God, servant king or servant, as opposed to Jesus as the King Messiah, as the Jews were looking for. And I see that some of this as that conflict. Jesus is saying, he's here as the servant. He's not here to come as the king. And I think that's how I see this concept, kind of what's going on here.
Brings up an interesting question. Was Jesus the servant of mankind or the servant of God? Someone care to comment on that?
Yes,
Yes, Don?
yes.
Yes? Yes?
All of you.
Okay. Okay, Jackie, I know how you feel now when I say yes to you.
He was sent by God to show the people the servant of God. And that's the other thing it says, what I read before, but it says here, the narrative, after he said to be killed and after 3 days arise, the narrative begins to include less of what Jesus was doing and more of what he was saying. That's what you're coming out with. The time had come for Jesus to teach his followers what they had signed up for, the servant. That's just what Jesus is saying. It's not necessarily saying, and that's the purpose of our lesson.
Okay.
Jesus.
Final question on this section. If you had been Peter, excuse me, if you had been Peter, how would you have responded to Jesus' rebuke?